So my brother and I, decided to go our ways with his family and my family. And Sharice and I were evangelizing all over the nation. We traveled all over the nation, just she and I, for several years. And Pastor Welburn, the pastor of Free Chapel, asked me to start coming, and I would come once a year and preach at Free Chapel. And he booked me 9 months in advance, and he got sick and died on the Sunday that he booked me to come 9 months in advance. And so I preached that morning, and the church had his funeral that afternoon. And then, here, I'm going somewhere. Change of pace, change of place, change of perspective. Up until that point, we had been so busy preaching. I'd have revivals that would go night after night after night that we had never really taken much of a break. And Sharice said, hey, my Aunt Margaret has moved to Rogers, Arkansas, her and Gene, her husband. And not Jonathan, but Ron, their oldest son, and Gene's mother needs to go out there. So let's drive them, Jentezen. Let's drive them. Let's take some time off. Watch this. And she didn't say it in these ways, but look at the genius of God. Change of pace, change of place, change of perspective. And so we did something we'd never done. It was a 14-hour drive. We get in the car with Granny in the back, Ron in the back, me and Sharice in the front, and we drive. And Bill Stowe, who is a board member here still to this day, called us, and he had said it to us earlier, but he called us again, and he said, would you consider, Jentezen, allowing us on the board of directors of Free Chapel to consider you for pastor? And I was so honored, but I'd never pastored a church, and I had no desire. I was in a different denomination. Everything was going great. I had no desire to pastor, but Sharice did. And Sharice said, we ought to go to that church. She said, I don't have to pray about it. I don't have to pray about it. Why do you have to pray about it? Why don't we just go there? I'm telling you, women have discernment. Now watch this. Watch this. We get in that car and we start driving to Rogers, Arkansas. Change your pace. If I'd have just went somewhere and preached another revival, I wouldn't even given it 10 minutes. Such a major thing. Such a major shift in my life. But if I wouldn't have changed the pace and the place, I don't know if I'd have got the perspective of God. This is why fasting and seeking God is so important. Now, I speed now to the conclusion of this. And here's what happened. So we get to Arkansas, and I have to give him a yes or no. You can throw my name in the hat. And I love that Bill Stowe reminded me, the second phone call, he reminded me, he said, well, now, don't get all, because I was like, oh, no. He said, well, no, don't get all up about it. He said, they may reject you. They may not want you. The denomination may not allow you to do that. The people, not only have you got to go through the filter of the board, you got to go through the people. Everybody, and people may not, they may not want a rookie preacher for their pastor. It's a good, humbling little thing right there. But Sharice said, you need to pray about it. And so I began to fast and pray while we were out in Arkansas, in Margaret and Gene's home. And every day I would go, and there's a little church in Rogers, Arkansas. It sits up on a hill, sort of, and it had a parking lot off the main road that was private. And I was looking for a prayer place, and I pulled in there, and they didn't have a staff or anything, apparently, because there were never any cars out there. It's just an empty parking lot. And every day I'd get out and walk around that parking lot and pray, God, show me your will. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And toward the end of that week, I pulled into that parking lot, and I grabbed a little bitty book for some reason and my Bible, and I had I grabbed that book called The Invading Force. It was a little bitty thin, you could read it quick. And I flipped it open, and it had a little part in the book that was highlighted that said, I'm giving you your marching orders. And I kept reading, and it just, everything you can imagine that I needed for confirmation was in that little booklet, and it tore me up. I'm sitting there weeping, I'm crying. I knew God had called me to be pastor of Free Chapel. I drove back home after I walked around that parking lot and wept. I came through the door, and every time I'd come through the door, Sharice would come. She was only 19 years old. She would come running and say, are we going? Are we going? Did God speak to you yet? She'd follow me. Did God speak to you yet? Did God speak to you? And I went in the bedroom, and I fell across the bed, and I started weeping. And I said, God has told us that we are to go to that church in Gainesville, Free Chapel. And I told her what God told me he would do. And that parking lot of that church, people drive by it every day and it means nothing to them. But to me, that parking lot, think of, it was a field of dreams that afternoon that would shift everything in my life to step into God's plan. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel so that you can get notifications on new posts and live streams. Be sure to share this video with a friend. You never know how you can send the Word of God right when somebody needs to hear it. And you can use your social influence for good, for the glory of God. Thanks again. Share it with a friend. And I really appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time.